Have you ever wondered why these films are called spaghetti westerns? Well, that's exactly what we're exploring today, so grab your popcorn, saddle up, and whoosh, let's ride. Wah, wah, wah. Let's start by breaking down the name itself, spaghetti westerns. The term comes from the fact that many of these films were produced or directed by Italians in the 1960s and early 1970s. Now, if you're thinking, wait, westerns from Italy? You're not alone. Italy wasn't just making pizza and pasta, they were also pumping out some of the most iconic westerns in cinema history. And the spaghetti part? Well, that's a playful reference to Italy's most famous food, spaghetti. The term spaghetti western was coined by critics, often with a bit of a mocking tone, to describe these low-budget Italian-made films that were inspired by the classic American western genre. These films were known for their gritty, exaggerated style and the way they often pushed the boundaries of violence and morality. The name is really about where these films came from, Italy, and a cheeky nod to Italian culture. It's not meant to be disrespectful, but more of an outsider's way of recognizing these foreign-made westerns that were so distinct from the traditional American ones. Before we get into the unique qualities of spaghetti westerns, let's talk a bit about the westerns that inspired them, the American westerns. These were the films that defined the genre, featuring cowboys, lawmen, outlaws, and the quintessential showdown in the dusty streets of small western towns. Think John Wayne, Gary Cooper, and directors like John Ford and Howard Hawks. These American westerns were usually big-budget productions made in the US with clear moral lines between good and evil. But by the 1960s, the western genre was beginning to feel a bit stale, and that's where Italian filmmakers came in. Spaghetti westerns were born when Italian director Sergio Leone came up with a new gritty take on the American West. His film A Fistful of Dollars in 1964 was a massive success, and it kicked off a whole subgenre of westerns made by Italian filmmakers. These films had a distinctive style. They were often shot in Spanish or Italian locations with dusty desert landscapes standing in for the American West. But what set them apart from American westerns were their characters' tone and violence. The heroes were often morally ambiguous, the violence was more stylized and brutal, and the storytelling was much more cynical. They didn't shy away from exploring the darker side of human nature, and the good guy wasn't always so clear-cut. Another thing that set spaghetti westerns apart was their unforgettable soundtracks, particularly the work of composer Ennio Morricone. His music for films like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966 is legendary, and it became the hallmark of the genre. The use of dramatic, whistle-filled scores and haunting melodies added to the tension and atmosphere, making these films stand out not just for their visuals, but for their sound as well. The music in spaghetti westerns became so iconic that it's now almost synonymous with the genre. Spaghetti westerns weren't just a passing trend. They left a lasting impact on filmmaking, influencing everything from modern westerns to action films, and even the visual style of directors like Quentin Tarantino, who clearly draws inspiration from these films in movies like Django Unchained and Kill Bill. Movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly are still considered masterpieces, and the genre has gained a cult following over the years. While the heyday of spaghetti westerns may have been in the 1960s and 70s, their influence is definitely still felt today. So bringing it full circle like a dusty old tumbleweed, why are these films called spaghetti westerns? The name comes from the fact that they were made by Italian filmmakers, often on lower budgets, and the term spaghetti is a playful nod to Italy's iconic food. These films redefine the genre with their gritty realism, morally complex characters, and unforgettable music.